The first time I saw the check, I almost laughed. It lay folded neatly between old taxi receipts and faded grocery slips inside the wallet I rarely opened. Its edges yellowed like paper that had slept untouched for years. The ink shimmered faintly under the kitchen light. Too dark, too fresh for something forgotten. And then my eyes caught on the name. It wasn't mine, at least not the one I've ever lived by. The letters were unfamiliar, curved and elegant. Yet when my gaze dropped to the signature line, my breath caught in my throat. The handwriting was unmistakable. Mine. Every flourish, every hesitation in the pen stroke matched the way I'd signed contracts, leases, credit card receipts. My own name had always felt clumsy in my hand, a scrawl I never mastered. But this was perfect. My hand only steadier. I whispered the strange name aloud, rolling it on my tongue. It didn't feel foreign, not exactly. It felt like a word I'd almost remembered in a dream, just beyond reach, returning only in fragments that slipped through my mind like water. The amount on the check was obscene, more money than I'd ever touched, certainly more than I deserved, and stamped across the top in the cold, impersonal ink of a bank I didn't recognize was the word certified. My stomach sank with a slow, creeping weight. I folded the check back into the wallet, as though hiding it might undo what I had seen. But the paper lingered in my thoughts like a persistent whisper. It wasn't the money that unsettled me. It was the possibility that somewhere, someone believed this identity, this other me, was real. The next morning, I took the check to the bank. It was an impulsive decision, one I regretted the moment I stood in line beneath the fluorescent lights. The bank smelled of polish and stale air conditioning, a sterility that made me feel even more misplaced. When it was finally my turn, I slid the check across the counter, expecting, hoping, for the teller to frown, to shake her head, to confirm what I already knew. "This doesn't belong to you." Instead, she glanced at it, typed something into her terminal, and smiled politely. Would you like to deposit this into your existing account, or open a new one under the issuing name?" The room tilted. I felt a pressure in my chest, not unlike vertigo, as though the walls had leaned in slightly, conspiratorially. My throat dried. You accept this?" I managed. Her eyes flicked to the check, then back to me. "The signature matches our records." She said it with the calm certainty of someone discussing the weather. Our records. I must have stood there too long, silent and pale, because she tilted her head, her polite smile stiffening into a hint of concern. "Sir, do you need a moment?" I nodded, clumsily, and gathered the check back into trembling hands. My legs carried me out of the bank before my mind could catch up. The cold air outside hit me like a slap, and I stood on the steps trying to breathe. It wasn't possible. My name had never been anything but what I knew. Yet here was proof, sanctioned and acknowledged by an institution designed to resist doubt, telling me otherwise. I didn't go home. Not right away. I walked instead, down unfamiliar streets, turning corners without thinking. My fingers brushed the folded paper in my pocket again and again, as though to reassure myself it was still there. Each time I touched it, the unease deepened, like handling something alive that pretended to be still. At dusk, I found myself in front of an office building I didn't recognize. Its glass doors reflected me, warped in the amber streetlight. But when I shifted, the reflection seemed to lag, my face delayed by a heartbeat. My stomach twisted. I couldn't say why I stepped inside. The lobby was empty. No guard at the desk, no receptionist. Just the low hum of ventilation and the faint smell of ozone. On the wall hung a directory of tenants, their names etched in brass. Most meant nothing to me, faceless corporations. But near the bottom, my breath stuttered. There it was. The name from the check. My name, if the bank was to be believed. I should have left. I knew that. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to walk into the night and never return. But my feet betrayed me. They carried me to the elevator, my finger pressing the button without my permission. The ride was silent, except for the faint groan of machinery. With each floor, the unease grew heavier, pressing against my skin. By the time the doors slid open, my pulse thundered so loudly I almost didn't hear the other sound. Typing. A steady rhythm of keys, soft but insistent, echoing down the corridor. The hallway stretched long and sterile, lined with closed doors, all identical. At the far end, one stood ajar. The glow of a monitor spilled through the gap. I moved closer, drawn like a moth. Inside, the office was dim, save for the pale light of the screen. Papers littered the desk, neat stacks that felt oddly rehearsed, like props in a staged scene. But it was the monitor that froze me. Lines of text scrolled across, one after another. Each line was my handwriting. Not typed, not font, but scanned images of my own scrawl. Letters I had written in childhood. Notes from university, signatures from contracts, even grocery lists. Every fragment of ink I'd ever left behind, cataloged and archived into an endless stream of my own hand. And interspersed between them, something else. Documents I had never written, dates I had never lived, letters signed with the strange name from the check, yet penned in my unmistakable script. Memories from a life that wasn't mine, but wore my handwriting like a mask. A faint sound escaped my throat. My knees threatened to buckle. And then, from the speakers, a voice. "Why did you stop signing it?" I staggered back. The voice was my own, slightly distorted, hollow, but unmistakably mine. The monitor flickered, and new text appeared, as if typed by invisible hands. "You think you chose your name. You didn't. You think you remember who you are. You don't." The room seemed to constrict, air thinning. My chest tightened, as though invisible hands pressed against my ribs. "You belong to both names," the voice whispered, softer now, almost coaxing. "One you live, one you forgot. Which one will you keep?" I turned and fled. The office, the building, the entire block felt like a trap closing around me. My lungs burned as I reached the street, and even then I didn't stop. I ran until my legs screamed, until my breath broke ragged, until the city blurred into shadow. When at last I collapsed in the safety of my apartment, I locked the door, bolted it, shoved a chair against the knob like a child afraid of nightmares. But even then, I knew it was useless, because the wallet still sat on the table. And when I pulled the check free with trembling hands, I saw something new. The date had changed. It was today's, and the amount was no longer obscene, no longer some impossible fortune. It was precise, exact, the balance of my own bank account, down to the last cent. My signature, flawless as ever, gleamed beneath it. I don't know how long I sat there staring, long enough for the room to grow darker, for the shadows on the wall to stretch unnaturally long, reaching toward me, long enough for the silence to shift, heavy with a presence that waited, patient, certain. The paper pulsed faintly in my grip, warm against my skin, and somewhere beneath the pounding of my heart, I could almost hear it, the echo of a pen scratching, steady and deliberate, writing a name I wasn't sure I had ever escaped, the name that wasn't mine, the name the bank still recognized, the name that might, after all, be the real one. I closed my eyes, and in the darkness, the sound grew louder, not in memory, not in imagination, in the room with me, writing, and signing my name. The wrong one. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the check in front of me, the lamp throwing a cone of weak yellow light across its surface. The numbers gleamed like teeth. The false, or maybe true, name seemed to breathe on the page, waiting for me to speak it aloud again. Each time I tried, the word stuck in my throat like a shard of ice. I couldn't even bring myself to destroy it. I tried once, lifting a lighter to the corner, but the flame sputtered out as if denied oxygen. The paper stayed whole. By dawn, my mind was fevered. I told myself I would prove its falseness. That's all, nothing more. I'd go back to the bank, demand answers, watch them struggle to explain the impossible. I would reclaim my certainty. But certainty is not something you retrieve once it's gone. The bank lobby was emptier this time, yet it felt as though I wasn't alone. My eyes kept catching on the glass walls, reflections slightly offbeat, mouths moving a fraction behind, fingers curling half a second late. I pressed the check to the counter, and when the clerk asked how I wanted to proceed, the words slipped from my mouth before I could stop them. New account, under the other name. The syllables left me with unnatural ease, as if I'd rehearsed them all my life. My chest constricted, waiting for her to frown, to question me, but instead she smiled with bland efficiency. Of course, papers slid toward me, forms that were already filled. I skimmed them, my own handwriting staring back in every blank line, every signature already signed. My pen trembled in my grip. The moment I touched the page, a current shot through me. Not painful, but sharp, as if the ink itself recognized me. I signed anyway. The clerk nodded, satisfied. Welcome back. Back. I left the bank with a folder under my arm, but the city around me had shifted. Or maybe I had. Buildings leaned too tall, shadows stretched too long. Street signs bore names I almost knew. And faces. Everywhere faces I half recognized. A man at a bus stop nodded at me knowingly. A woman across the street smiled faintly before turning away. None spoke, but their eyes lingered too long, as though expecting me to remember something important. That night, my apartment betrayed me. It started with the photographs. I'd never been one to frame memories, but suddenly the walls were crowded with them. Pictures of me in places I'd never stood, with people I'd never met. Yet in each one, my smile was easy, my posture natural, my hand resting with intimacy on shoulders I didn't know. I tore one from the wall, my own face grinning back at me, and flipped it over. Written neatly in ink. The other name, I whispered into the silence, asking the air who I was. The air answered back. From the corner of the room, faint at first but unmistakable, the scratch of a pen on paper. I spun, heart hammering, and saw my desk drawer sliding open on its own. Inside lay page after page of documents, letters, contracts. Each bore my hand, each signed with the false name, the one I was trying to deny. I picked one up. The ink was still wet. I dropped it, my skin crawling. That was the moment I realized. The check wasn't an intrusion into my life. My life was the intrusion. The check was a reminder. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls. The folder from the bank grew thicker each day, though I never added to it. Every morning, new forms appeared, stamped, verified, complete. My signature gleamed on each one, but I never lifted a pen. And then came the letters. They arrived in my mailbox without stamps or addresses. Brittle envelopes marked only with the false name. Inside, each one carried a single line, typed cleanly on crisp white paper. We are waiting for you. Sometimes, you've been away too long. And once, you must decide which self to abandon. I didn't know what to do. My thoughts began to blur. Two sets of memories seeping into one another. Childhood games played in backyards that didn't exist. A first kiss under a tree that had never grown near my home. A job I'd never held. Colleagues I'd never met. all lodged with the same weight and clarity as my real past. Real past. Already the phrase tasted false. I tried to resist. I destroyed the letters, shredded them, burned them. They reappeared the next morning, laid gently on my pillow like gifts. The photographs multiplied, crowding my walls, my shelves, the mirror. Every reflection now showed me wearing an expression I didn't recognize. Composed, calm, assured, as though the other life had already taken root and flourished. The true fracture came when I saw my reflection hesitate. I'd leaned over the sink, splashing water on my face when I noticed it. The delay. My reflection lingered, still dripping when I'd already straightened. And then, in the faint fog of condensation on the mirror's surface, the name appeared, written in a perfect arc. My name. The wrong one. The one I was becoming. I screamed, slammed my fist against the glass. But the letters didn't smudge. They remained clear and deliberate, as though etched into the surface itself. I no longer know which version of me is real. I carry two wallets now. One holds my ID, my cards, the name I've lived with for decades. The other holds the check, the folder, the endless letters. Sometimes I mix them up. Sometimes I catch myself introducing myself with the wrong name to strangers. And worse, they don't correct me. They nod, accepting, as though it's what they expected all along. At night, the sound returns, that ceaseless scratching of pen on paper, only now it's not in the corner of the room. It's closer, beside me, on the nightstand, though no hand holds the pen. Pages fill themselves in the dark, signatures unfurling line by line. Mine, always mine. I think about surrendering, about stepping fully into that other life, abandoning the fragile scaffolding of the one I thought was mine. Perhaps that's the point. The check was never a gift, never money at all. It was an invitation, a contract. But I hesitate, because if I choose it, if I let that other name consume me, then who disappears? Do I vanish into nothing? Or do I remain here, a ghost haunting a life no longer mine, watching another self walk free in my place? I don't know how many more nights I can withstand the sound of my own hand writing a life I don't remember. The pen never stops, the ink never runs dry, and the paper never runs out. And every morning, the balance on the check changes. It's no longer my bank account it mirrors. It's my time. The sum decreases slowly, day by day, as though tallying what remains. Tonight, the number is very small. I sit here, the check trembling in my hands, the pen scratching steadily in the dark beside me, and I realize the most terrifying truth. This was never about proving who I am. It was about reminding me what I already agreed to be. And when the last figure on the check reaches zero, when the ink finishes writing the final line, I will have to sign, not to prove my identity, but to give it up.